What if the biggest thing killing your productivity wasn't distraction, procrastination, or even meetings, but something invisible, a hidden force inside your brain working against you? And when you understand it, it'll explain why some days feel effortless and others are a complete loss. Now, I'm Rian, founder and CEO of FlowState.com. We've trained everyone from Audi, Accenture, and the US Air Force to use neuroscience-based principles to access flow states at will, and it is good to be back with you. We got lots coming, so stay tuned. Now, the first time I built a proper team of employees, I thought my schedule would finally open up, giving me the space to focus on the kind of deep, high-impact work in a flow state that I knew would push the business forward. But instead of getting more done, I found myself stuck in a trap I couldn't name. I'd wake up ready for deep, meaningful work, and then I'd glance at my calendar, 9:30 a.m., meeting. Suddenly, something subtle would shift, like a whisper in the back of my mind saying, is it even worth starting something deep or difficult right now? I'd try to fight it. I'd open up the project anyway, ready to dive into the complexity, but somewhere under the surface, my brain was already pulling back, not because I didn't want to work, but because I knew I couldn't go as deep as I wanted. By the time the meeting ended, I tried to reset, but the next obligation was already looming. Noon, I had a team all hands just a few hours later. It wasn't the meetings that were killing my productivity, it was the mental math my brain was doing in the background, quietly recalculating whether the effort required to exert in order to accomplish deep work was worth it. I wasn't procrastinating, I wasn't distracted. I was doing something far more damaging without even realizing. I was rationing effort before I even began. Every future obligation on my calendar was shrinking my willingness to engage with the work that mattered most. And here's the brutal irony. I had built this team to increase my productivity. Instead, I had destroyed it. I was now the least productive person on the team, and the biggest bottleneck became me. Except now, I had the overhead of salaries and I couldn't find the uninterrupted space to lead, strategize, or even properly manage the team so that they were productive. It was only later that I realized what exactly was really happening. See, I was trying to get into flow state, that peak state of focus and execution where productivity soars and we're totally immersed in the task at hand. But what I didn't understand at the time was that flow isn't just something you fall into. It's one stage in a 4-phase cycle. The first phase, it's called struggle. This is where your brain wrestles with the challenge at hand and there's a surge of norepinephrine which makes it hugely uncomfortable. Then there's release, where you transition into flow. You need a moment where the brain lets go of conscious control. The next part of the flow cycle is the flow state itself. So flow, the peak performance state where everything clicks, immersion, deep focus, and effortless action pop online. And then finally, the fourth stage is recovery. Once flow is over, your brain needs active recovery to consolidate learning, replenish neurotransmitters, and prepare for the next cycle. The problem wasn't that I was being interrupted. It was about the hidden cost of having my focus constantly held hostage by whatever was coming next on my calendar. I was losing the willingness to struggle in the first place, and that's the problem. If you know in advance that your work will be interrupted, you subconsciously resist the struggle phase, bracing at it rather than tackling it full on, which is what's required to pop through release and into flow, because your brain calculates that the effort won't be worth the reward. Building a sandcastle on the beach feels pointless if the tide can just wipe it away at any moment. Same with work. If you know you'll be interrupted, struggle becomes harder to endure. So to justify it, a little bit of progress on the task isn't enough alone. You need the promise of prolonged, uninterrupted immersion in flow state. Think of surfing. Would you wake at dawn, wax your board, and battle cold waves if the ocean went flat after 1 or 2 rides? I know I wouldn't. There just wouldn't be enough of a struggle payoff. It's the same with persisting through struggle in work. You rally your focus, block distractions, push through discomfort, only to have a meeting or something on your calendar after 90 minutes. Without an uninterrupted flow session, struggle feels pointless. There's no real, meaningful waves to catch. This sabotaging of the struggle payoff is often attributed to the usual culprits, distractions and interruptions and even procrastination. But there's something else working against you, something even simpler than that. These things that you see on your calendar all the damn time that ruin your day in the way I've just described, these are called calendar choke points. A calendar choke point is a seemingly minor obligation, a meeting, an appointment, something on your calendar that fragments your day and leaves you with insufficient time to get into flow. Building on the surfing analogy, imagine this. You're paddling out into the ocean, ready to catch some waves. Just as you're about to catch the perfect wave, someone else drops in, killing your momentum. A calendar choke point is that other surfer. It's that single, unwelcome but planned disruption in your day that kills your momentum and ruins your ability to access deep states of flow. Now, what's happening in the brain that causes calendar choke points to be so effective at sabotaging flow? Well, we hypothesize, based on the research, that it's due to the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That flow state happens when all of your attention is fully locked into the present. But a calendar choke point creates a neurological tug of war between now and next. Among other things, your DLPFC is responsible for prospective time monitoring, tracking future obligations, ensuring you don't forget what's coming up next. The moment a meeting appears on on your calendar, your DLPFC locks onto it and starts to run background processes, subtly anchoring and manipulating your attention against the upcoming event. This creates sustained activation in the DLPFC, and that's the problem, because flow requires the opposite. Flow happens when the prefrontal cortex down-regulates, a state that Arne Dietrich's research names transient hypofrontality. This prefrontal quieting is what allows for some of the key characteristics that make flow such a profound state that we seek so much. The loss of self-consciousness. You stop thinking about yourself and just act uninhibited instead. The merging of action and awareness, where you get effortless, fluid attention and execution. Time dilation, where you lose track of time with minutes turning into hours. Another way you can think of what's happening in flow is that you're surrendering. The you, the inner critic, the you feel behind your eyes that grips, holds on, steers, and tries to control every aspect of your life, begins to dissipate and fade into non-existence. You are temporarily surrendering your sense of self, suspending conscious control over your own existence. And the paradox is, by relinquishing that control, you access a deeper freedom. Your brain shifts from effortful top-down control to more efficient bottom-up processing, which ironically results in more control. Regions like the basal ganglia and cerebellum take over, allowing practice skills and intuition to flow without interference from self-doubt. But again, it's extremely hard to let go and surrender into flow when the brain has to have high prefrontal activity, which it does have to have if you've got a damn thing on your schedule a few hours ahead. There's a simple inherent contradiction. You're trying to quiet the DLPFC, and yet you've given it something to chew on and stay activated around. Your brain struggles with doing both at the same time. Neurologically, it's kind of like trying to flex and relax a muscle at the same time. Your DLPFC can't power down while it's counting down. And because the DLPFC stays engaged, tracking the time gap constantly, recalibrating your effort in accordance with it, you never fully let go. Remember, the struggle is effortful. It requires a surge of norepinephrine, pushing through discomfort, blocking out distractions, sustaining focus long enough for flow to emerge. But when your DLPFC is already monitoring a future event, your brain instinctively resists the struggle. It knows at some level the tide is coming in before you can even build a sandcastle. So you hesitate, you hold back, you ration energy, calibrate effort, shift toward low-impact tasks, because struggle only makes sense when there's enough time to reach the payoff. This is why even a single calendar commitment fundamentally alters your ability to access flow state. A single meeting, even one 30-minute call at 2 p.m., bang in the middle of an otherwise empty day, derails the day, not because of the time or prep that the meeting requires, but because that one meeting on our calendar fundamentally alters the nature of your consciousness and decreases your susceptibility to flow and peak performance. It's a 30-minute meeting, but it's a day-long alteration of your consciousness. See, calendar choke points don't just fragment your schedule, they fragment you. They fragment your mind. This is why high-flow individuals are hypersensitive to calendar choke points. They've felt what it's like to have a fully open cognitive runway. No effort calibration, no clock watching, just pure, uninterrupted flow. And once you've experienced that, even a single meeting in the middle of the day feels like a landmine, because you know at a deep neurological level that it's not just a time slot, it's chronic DLPFC activation. And once that switch is flipped, the cognitive doors to flow start to shut. On the other hand, the more choke point free time you have, the more expansive, fluid, and immersive your experience of work and life becomes. So let's clear these calendar choke points so we can maximize the struggle payoff. But first, start with the basics. To avoid calendar choke points, collapse meetings where possible, from in-person to Zoom, Zoom to phone, phone to email, email to text, text to no meeting, a canceled meeting, because research has found that up to 70% of meetings are unnecessary. Any meetings that you still have to have, shrink them at least 25% in terms of length, at least the ones you control. And when that's not possible, batch your communication outside of your peak productive hours and bookend your meetings. Either knock them all out at the beginning of the day or right up against your hard stop for the day after you've done a deep, long flow block. And here's a bonus tip. Rather than trying to end your meetings 5 minutes early so you can get a recovery burst in, start them 5 minutes after the hour or the half hour. By doing this, your likelihood of being able to take a break increases. For example, a meeting that runs from 2 to 2:25 will run over to 2:30, since that's the natural time people expect. But if you end it at 2:30, which is when other people have calls, but the next one doesn't start till 2:35, your likelihood of having a 5-minute break is much higher. Now take a hard look at your calendar. We're going to hunt down those pesky choke points, the events that are keeping your DLPFC activated and strangling your potential for flow. Maybe it's that weekly status meeting that's always running over, or that coffee date with an acquaintance that you feel obligated to keep. Whatever they are, circle the top 3 types of activities that are creating the most calendar choke points for you. Now it's time to clear them out and set boundaries. Here's the exact protocol to run. Step 1, implement policy bans. For each identified choke point source, create a policy ban. This is where the flow no comes into play. The flow no is a tactic for setting boundaries without guilt or awkwardness. Instead of saying no to individuals, you say no to categories of activities that don't align with your goals. By framing your refusal as a clear, preset policy, you protect your priorities while maintaining relationships. For example, I don't do social meetups during the work week, or I'm off booze entirely for November, or I'm on a no coffee and meetups diet for the rest of the year, or I'm not doing podcasts until after my book comes out. Whatever it is, you'll notice that the no has nothing to do with the person asking. Rather, it's an external rule that they are just obliged to abide by that you set independently from them. I'll give you an example of a flow no in action. So let's say my friend Scott, who lives nearby me in LA, invites me to a party in the Hollywood Hills on Friday night, but I'm not available because I'm writing a book. So how do I say no to a good friend with an appealing invitation? Scott, I'd love to, but I'm writing a book, have a tight deadline, and I've banned myself from partying until it's complete, or whatever the case may be. Now you see the flow no here has 4 key parts. Firstly, politeness and personal acknowledgement. You want to acknowledge and compliment them on the value of whatever they're asking for. Second, admitting your shortcomings. Demonstrate humility by showing them what you can't handle about their request because of your own deficits. And third, state your priorities with specificity. State your priorities and be detailed so they can empathize with your situation. If you don't give enough information, they will fill in the gaps with less favorable assumptions. For example, that you just don't care. And then fourth, never backtrack. This makes your no seem disingenuous and can cause anger or irritation. The no must be a legitimate, immovable decision. Now you can download a fill-in-the-blank template for crafting your flow no responses below this video. So that's the flow no to help you prevent and clear calendar choke points. Next up is step 2, schedule an immersion runway. The same way a single meeting can fragment your focus within a day, a scattered week does the same thing except at scale. Each time you allow a meeting to slice up your workday, you not only lose flow today, you make it harder to access flow tomorrow. Why? Well, because your brain treats flow as an investment. If your DLPFC predicts that tomorrow will be another fragmented day, it subconsciously resists entering struggle today. This is why high flow individuals don't just protect individual days, they aim to protect entire weeks. Back-to-back choke point free days create what we call immersion runway, a sequence of uninterrupted high output work days where deep immersion compounds on itself. And just like with single day flow, the more runway you have, the easier it is to persist through struggle, let go, and enter flow faster each time. It's like the runway of a plane. For the plane to take off, you need a long runway. The longer the runway is, the deeper the flow states and their immersive quality can go. With immersion runway, you don't even have to think about setting priorities or what you'll do the next day. There's just the thing. The singular focus, the big, meaty, creative project that you're working on, and it just runs day over day. A lot of the thinking and strategizing required for peak performance becomes unnecessary when all you're doing is a multi-day immersion runway working on one critical project or task. You don't have to priority manage, you just do that one thing all day and flow with all else removed. And a solid way to measure one's life's creative output is to add up your total immersion runway. How many consecutive days with no calendar choke points singularly focused on whatever your highest priority thing is. To create immersion runway, maximize the total amount of choke point free days in your week. Be ruthless, reduce all the meeting lengths, cut all the meetings you don't need, and batch everything back to back. Aim to create at least 3 to 4 choke point free days within the next 10 days. One way to do this is with a 1-week meeting day. One client I was working with had enough space, roughly, to do all of his calls on a Monday, but he had them peppered throughout the week. So I had him institute a 1-week meeting day. This creates maximum flow potential and a longer immersion runway through the rest of the week, allowing for deep, sustained work. Remain incredibly vigilant about incoming call requests that will choke point any of the free days you have after this, and become comfortable with not doing a call until the following Monday. Even if they ask for a call on Tuesday or Wednesday, say, hey, I've got a spot on Monday, and allow yourself to wait the days required for that call to occur, which takes discipline. If you have some calls, spill it over into the next day, Tuesday, not into another day like Wednesday. You want consecutive choke point free days and as many as possible in a row. And remember, meetings aren't inherently anti-flow, but switching the category of activity that you're engaging in is. A benefit of a 1-month meeting day is you'll build up social flow, which is a subtype of flow state that can only happen when interacting with others. And this social flow can carry across meeting over meeting, specializing in that mode of cognition for that day and bifurcating from that mode of cognition for the other days. Now, step 3 is to address calendar reality drift. Identify any uncalendared flow blockers, actions or commitments that aren't on your calendar but could interrupt your flow state. Examples might include school pickup times, household chores, anticipated client calls that aren't pinned on the calendar, upcoming deadlines not yet scheduled. For each uncalendared action, do this. Decide if it needs to be on your calendar. If yes, schedule it. If no, create a reminder or system to manage it without interrupting your flow blocks. Now, by following these steps, you'll clear your calendar choke points, you'll maximize your struggle payoff, and you'll create a more accurate representation of your time commitments. This will allow you to enter the struggle phase of the flow cycle with confidence, knowing that the payoff of flow is there waiting for you in all its depth and glory on the other side of that initial grind. Now, by the way, over time, you want as many choke point free days in your calendar as possible, where your day doesn't have a single calendar choke point. That is the mark and one of the key characteristics of a true high flow lifestyle. You want days where there's nothing or only one thing, the absolute most important thing to do for hours on end. And that most important thing could be recovery, which is the 4th phase of the flow cycle. When you clear calendar choke points from work days, you get more flow. But when you clear calendar choke points from leisure days, you end up getting deeper, more immersive recovery, which then aids in giving you more and deeper flow. So aim for choke point free days at least a couple of times a week. Obviously, a lot of days you'll have to have things scheduled, so try and batch schedule as many spacious choke point free days in your calendar as you can. One open day is powerful, but 3, 4, 5 days in a row, that's where the real magic happens, because you can follow flow freely. You can surrender, let go, and find the deepest form of immersion. You can just sit down, jamming, enjoying work, and roll all the way through into the night and follow flow wherever it takes you. There's a different level of insight, creativity, productivity, ideas, and output when you follow flow rather than try to box it in. It's as if you loosen the reducing valve of consciousness and access what Aldous Huxley, author of Brave New World, called mind at large, the place where ideas come from or where the muse lives. When you protect empty space and follow flow, you can drop down to the depths where insight occurs, and the things that you produce during this choke point free space end up paying off and compounding for decades. So remember, because every yes to a calendar choke point is a no to your goals, every scattered meeting, every thoughtless yes to a calendar request depletes your brain's capacity for flow. But now you understand the true cost, and more importantly, how to stop paying it. By clearing calendar choke points and protecting large blocks of uninterrupted time, you create the conditions your brain needs to persist through struggle and drop into flow state day after day. Now that you've cleared space for deep flow, here's what's next. What you do between those focus blocks matters just as much. So click the video on screen to learn the science-backed way to take breaks that boost your dopamine, drive motivation, and keep you in flow longer.